At Battery Bill, we power everything by battery. It's not if an emergency happens, but when. Are you ready? Be prepared for this hurricane season. Having backup power ready for these necessities, home, refrigerator, and phone are essential for peace of mind to have uninterrupted power during an emergency. Do you need an affordable, reliable backup power solution? We have it. Goal Zero, Jackery, and EcoFlow. Reliable, innovative, and affordable. Power when you need it. Battery Bill, Mapuna-Puna, Nimitz, and Hilo. Battery Bill.
All right, how's it going, everybody? We welcome you to episode 117 here on Hawaii Football Now. That's right. We're nearing 120, believe it or not. Jordan Haley, Hunter Hughes with you as usual. Big mahalo to Spectrum Mobile, Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union, and Battery Bill as well for sponsoring this episode of the pod. Hunter and I fresh back from Wyoming, as we both got some pretty cool opportunities that we'll get into here a little bit later on in the pod. We actually record this Monday, November 20th at 8:45 p.m. or so. It's kind of a busy time of the year. We've got all kinds of things going on, covering a bit of the Maui Invitational, which is being held over on Oahu. Getting ready for the senior night season finale for the University of Hawaii football team later on this week, where Hunter will be patrolling the sidelines as usual for ESPN Honolulu coverage. So with all of the crazy schedules and the fact that Thanksgiving is on Thursday, we're going to record this a little bit earlier in the week than we normally do, but set to release it as usual on Thursday. That'll be Thanksgiving, so a little Thanksgiving edition of the pod. So wanted to kind of just start off there on our opening drive by wishing everybody a Thanksgiving, and kind of expressing our thanks to you guys, the listeners, the viewers, who have made the podcast as cool and fun for us as I think we could have ever hoped for. Of course, big shout out to our guys, Jaron and Jonathan, who have done all of the tireless work behind the scenes to make sure that the pod gets up week to week. And so, Thanksgiving, a nice time to pause a little bit and send out a bit of the appreciation. And thanks to you, my man. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we just keep this thing rolling, man. Into the off season, there will be no shortage of things to talk about, as we've learned through a few seasons of Hawaii football. Because every time we think that, man, what are we going to talk about next week? Something happens. Something always finds a way to happen. So looking forward to that. Just 1 week left in the season, and we know that for sure because Hawaii sitting at 4-8. I don't think they're getting into a bowl game at 5-8. Probably not happening, no matter how many bowl berths they put out there these days. So, yeah, just wanted to send a little bit of thanks to get things started here, Hunter.
Oh, man, a little attitude of gratitude is never a bad idea to start anything, let alone a podcast. And I'm super thankful for the both of you and also to our man Jonathan, who also is producing this from time to time. And thankful for Hawaii football, despite of maybe not the strongest of showings. I said it on the broadcast this last weekend with John Veneri. He asked for my final words, and there's a verse from the Bible, okay, that came up to mind. And of course, my dad's a preacher. It's in me. It comes out whether I want it to or not. And there's a verse that says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And if you ask me, that is the perfect verse to sum up the Hawaii football season, because we were just good enough to get our hopes up. But hope continuing to be pushed off just makes your heart sick, man. And that's kind of where the Hawaii fan base is sitting here. It was definitely not the showing that we wanted to. What we wanted to see at Wyoming, but there are certainly a lot of sparks and a lot of bright spots that we saw this season, Jordan. And I know we've got one game left. I don't want to talk like the year's over just yet, but there was certainly plenty of bright spots to think back on this year. So yeah, that's kind of my thought to get the pod rolling.
Yeah, I like that. And always got to cling to that hope. Always got to cling. Some improvements being made this season. The hope was maybe to find a way to get to that 6 wins and see if they can't get into a bowl game, but that seems to be off the table now after the loss at Wyoming. We'll get into that here in just a second, but before we head into the game time, I want to remind you that Hawaii Football Now is brought to you by Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. As Hawaii's largest credit union, they are committed to serving individuals and businesses through its 14 branch locations statewide and convenient digital banking services. As a leader in providing support for the islands, Hawaii USA is committed to strengthening Hawaii's financial wellness and sharing successes with members, local businesses, and the greater community. Visit HawaiiUSAFCU.com. All right, game time here on episode 117. Jordan and Hunter along with you as we near the season finale, the penultimate game of the year taking place in Laramie. And unfortunately for Hawaii, it did not start well, and it did not go well overall, I should say, as the Bows drop 42-9 decision against the Cowboys. And Wyoming maintains possession of the Paniolo Trophy. I love the Paniolo Trophy, by the way. One of my favorite trophies in all of college football. And I think, quite honestly, my favorite of the rivalry trophies for the University of Hawaii. All of them special, obviously, for a number of reasons, especially the Dick Tomey Legacy Trophy and the meaning behind that one. But man, the Paniolo Trophy is as cool as it gets. And Wyoming's going to hold on to it for a second year in a row. Wyoming covers as 13.5-point favorites. The total goes over 45.5. Hawaii now 4-7-1 against the spread. And the over now 6-6 through their 12 games. Hawaii falls to 4-8 on the season, and at best can get to 5-8, and likely not the 6 wins that could possibly have gotten them into a bowl game. So the Bows didn't start fast, dug themselves an early hole, and we're down 35-0 at halftime. There's a whole we can get into, but your initial comments here, Hunter.
Yeah, you were talking about the rivalry trophies, and my first question is, who decides what's a rivalry and who's not? Because if they would have come up with a Bulldog Warrior trophy between us and Fresno, that would be, golly, that we would want that every single year. I'm just going to speak candidly. I mean, it's cool that, like, the Paniolo Trophy, from a craftsmanship and from an artistic standpoint, best looking trophy that we get the opportunity to play for. Tanner Hayworth and I threw out an idea that each year the pineapple trophy that we play for against UNLV should actually get bigger. You know how, like, fruit grow over time. Maybe like the Stanley Cup, like each team gets all the members of the team like a plate, and each year.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. What if we just make it a real pineapple?
I mean, come
real
on,
pineapple out there. We just cut that thing up and
throw us the
celebrate.
ball. Yeah, we'd love to make you the title sponsor of that one. It seems like a slam dunk to me, but I digress. The Fresno game should be a rivalry trophy, and it should be a designated game. Don't want to get into that right now, but you're exactly right. Paniolo Trophy is certainly cool, but back to the game. Yeah, Jordan, the first half of this Wyoming game. Where has this Wyoming team been for like the second half of this season? Were they like, did half the team get called back onto farm duty? Because man, you and I were there this week, and it seemed like those guys are either, if they're not on the farm, then they've got close relatives on the farm. It just, that whole crew is built for agriculture. And man, that first half was one of the best football teams that we've seen all season. And I'm including the first half against Oregon. I mean, if we're going to go numbers for numbers, they outscored Oregon than when we played Oregon in Eugene. It was only 34-0 at half, and this one was 35. The way that they disguised their tight ends, put them down into kind of a double tight end, single back formation, and would either put them into blocking or then show the blocking and then get them out on a quick little push and go into the flat. And I thought Peasley was incredibly disciplined, their quarterback, watching how quickly he would get rid of the ball and get it to his guys in space and just allow them to, man, just be running. I mean, they looked like a team that was trying to compete for the Mountain West. And I mean, any team can be researched, and maybe there's other teams that just match up better against them in the trenches. Maybe they're a little bigger, but one thing was certain, Jordan, at least for the first half of that game, we were not on their level. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, no, it was a team that kind of thoroughly took it to the University of Hawaii, right? And when you look at things in this ball game, the tone was set not even 60 seconds in, right? This is a Wyoming team that has been very consistently good in the 10 years under Craig Bowl. They've been consistently bowl eligible, right? They're bowl eligible for the 7th time in the last 8 years or something like that. There was one year they didn't go to a bowl game. I think they were 6-6 or whatever it was, and didn't get selected. And then you had the weird COVID year. But other than that, they're winning 7-8 games every year. Never quite getting to like the 10-11 win threshold where you're having, a really, really good season. But boy, they've been the model of consistency since Craig Bowl took over. And so, but this Wyoming team, right, as you talked about, it's kind of interesting. You got a Hawaii team that, historically struggles on the road and obviously has just the one road win this season. And then you got a Wyoming team that is like night and day, home and away, right? They're 7-0. They now go 7-0 at home, and they're 0-4 on the road. That's Hawaii like splits when you look at it. And just a completely different team than we saw the week before at UNLV. And don't get me wrong, that UNLV team may be the best team in the conference. And so, factor opponent into that. But this is a Wyoming squad that has looked really good at times. It's a Wyoming squad that's looked pretty poor at times, like the loss at Boise, the loss at UNLV, even the win at home a couple of weeks prior against Colorado State in that rivalry game for the Bronze Boot. They beat the Rams. They didn't look all that great, right? It was a few plays here and there, but they set the tone. And you talked about Peasley. He set career highs in terms of yardage in the first half. Like his numbers at halftime when he went 10 of 11 in the first half. He set a new career high in terms of passing yards. He tied his career high in terms of passing touchdowns in the first half. Like his game highs, he had eclipsed or equaled in the first half. It was quite impressive. And I think that was the thing that really set the tone, right? It's a Wyoming team that grinds out games, that loves to run the football, that loves to play action game. But Peasley hadn't been the best passer in the world, right? He wasn't all that efficient throwing the football. And here the Cowboys come and they hit on a 44-yard touchdown pass 60 seconds into the ball game, right? As he Marquez over the top, 3 plays, 75 yards, aided by a 15-yard face mask penalty. And then they come right back and they go 1 play, 89 yards to their tight end who got matched up against Noah Kemma, not the greatest cover guy. But it was a brilliant design, as you pointed out, formationally, and then the execution. And here is Peasley, albeit throwing to guys who were pretty wide open. But again, putting it in the right spot. And you kind of, I think the book on Peasley was, hey, force him to throw, right? His best offense a lot of times is him breaking the pocket on unscripted plays, running with his legs. He's a really good runner. They didn't really need him to run. He didn't run all that much against Hawaii because he turned into Tom Brady out there. And that was maybe the most disappointing thing, right? And all of a sudden, Wyoming's up 7-0, 60 seconds in. They're up 14-0, barely more than 4 minutes into the game. And it's like, oh boy, it's deja vu all over again. Stop me if you've seen this story before, right? For the University of Hawaii. I thought they responded pretty well, right? Hawaii goes on that long drive after being down 14-0. I think it was 13 plays, 70-something yards. They started at their own 25-yard line. I guess it ended up being a 73-yard drive. They go for it on 4th and goal from the 2. A lot of that drive was running the football. Shager design run, Shager scrambles, methodically marching it down the field like we've seen the last couple of weeks. And then, maybe things are different, right? If they punch it in, make it 14-7, showed a bit of fortitude after getting punched in the mouth with those 2 big haymakers early on. And then maybe things change up a little bit, right? Because Wyoming ends up not scoring for the rest of the half. The rest of the quarter. They end up scoring 3 touchdowns in the second quarter, which really put this game away. But yeah, it was a lot of similar things for this Hawaii team where they couldn't quite finish drives. They gave up big plays. It allowed a Wyoming team to, capitalize on some uncharacteristic things. Didn't quite take away their best stuff. It was tough, man, and it got away from Hawaii pretty quickly.
Yeah, I almost wonder what it is for that Wyoming team, because if they're able to be as dominant as they have been at home, I really wonder if the altitude, 7,220 feet to be exact, really does help them set themselves apart at home. Whenever they play other teams, at sea level, not at elevation, it seems like the advantage completely swings over to the other team. And it's if they are conditioned at elevation, that's a huge advantage. But I liked what you said, Jordan. Hawaii did try to respond well early in that game. That team still had a lot of the same juice that they had midway through that Air Force game. They weren't quite chanting "Move the sled," but they were yelling out from the sideline, "Pass" or "Run." They were trying to help inspire our defense out there on the field. Those cheers quickly were subverted by the third score, understandably so. But I want to mention that because they were trying to put forth the extra effort to bring the juice and the energy to the game. There were a few times though, Jordan, where it seemed like they had in a few positions just superior athletes. That tight end catching the ball in space and then outrunning an outside linebacker of ours and then a safety in open field at 6'5", 240. I mean, that's like top tier, borderline NFL size and speed if you're outrunning safeties at the tight end position. And then Wiley, number 4, their running back. It looked like a couple of our DBs had the step to put on a decent angle of pursuit to at least get to the sideline, and he beat them to the mark and turned the corner on them. And so it quickly kind of felt from a defensive standpoint that we don't have an answer for these guys. And then, offensively, I didn't think it was a horrible game. Some of those, the second pick, okay, the second interception was Shager trying to make something happen when we were down deep. The first one, the back shoulder in the end zone, I mean, you're a quarterback. I know he would want that one back. That was not a good throw. We say it all the time. It's got to be ours or nobody's. He bounced back with a beautiful back shoulder to Chucky Hines later in the game, which was our lone touchdown. But it just wasn't a crispy day for us, the same way that it seemed in that Air Force game where we needed to be excellent, where we needed to be positionally sound in our execution, we were. For everything that we were in Air Force, we kind of weren't in this Wyoming game. And whether it was dropped passes, and I mean passes that are hitting our guys in the hands and the chest. I know that Alex Perry wants both the hitch route that he dropped that hit him in the hands or the drag route over the middle of the field, when at that point we were only down 2 scores and trying to mount a drive. I think it could be shared by a lot of the team that we weren't as dialed as we've shown in the past. And if you do that against a good team, it's going to be tough to win.
Yeah, especially when you dig yourself that early hole, right? Yeah, you mentioned the elevation. I mean, it's got to factor in a little bit, right? I don't know if it factored in like 4 of the first offensive plays going, 2 of the first 4 offensive plays going for touchdowns. But I love that they've got it everywhere, right? It's welcome to 7220, welcome to 77,220 feet. That's the elevation of War Memorial Stadium there in Laramie, Wyoming. It's on the turf. It's on the facade of the stadium. It is very prominent, and they will remind you how high up you are. It ended up turning out to be a beautiful day in terms of the weather, and we can talk about our Laramie experience here in just a bit. But yeah, it was a ball game that, the offense, again, they moved the football, but a team that was, I think, 5 of 5 or 7 of 7 or whatever it was the previous 2 weeks in the red zone, right? They were perfect in the red zone, not just scoring touchdowns. Every single trip into the red zone against Nevada and Air Force, they scored a touchdown. That wasn't the case here against Wyoming, right? They had a number of drives, including that one that ends on the 2. They had a couple of other drives that maybe didn't quite end up right in the red zone in the second half. They were down big at the time. but they got to like the 27 at one point. They got to the 31. I think in another ended up turning it over on downs. You got the turnover, the interception in the end zone that you talked about, Hunter. And so this group that had been pretty darn good in the red zone ends up going 2 for 4 in the red zone against Wyoming, and just one touchdown to go along with the one field goal. And so, it's for Hawaii, they just weren't as efficient as they were defensively, as you point out. There were a lot of opportunities left out there, and kind of let Wyoming have their way. It was the big pass play early on, then the play action game really kind of came back and killed Hawaii in a lot of ways. Because when you look at the numbers, it is quite interesting, right? Hawaii runs for 67 yards. It's a bit under their 100-yard performance from the week before, but they had 17 first downs to Wyoming's 20. Hawaii throws it for 278. Wyoming throws it for 319, which I believe was the season high for them. Hawaii had 345 yards total offense, but unfortunately Wyoming had 472 yards of total offense there. They averaged 9.4 yards per play in the game, did Wyoming, and just had their way, right? The Hawaii got a stop, I think, on Wyoming's second possession, or third possession it was. Got a stop on their third possession. And other than that, Wyoming scored on 5 of their 6 first half possessions. And I thought, to me, the stat that kind of told it all, albeit they were down 35-0, right? Wyoming, no third down conversions in the first half. That's because they faced 1 third down. That was it. 3-play drive, 1-play drive, things like that. But they were very dominant on first and second down. They faced 1 third down in the first half. I thought that was pretty wild, and kind of indicative of just how thoroughly that Wyoming offense was kind of having their way. They end up going 0 for 6 on third down for the game. They didn't convert a single third down, and yet they put 42 points up on the board. Hawaii 10 of 20 on third down. Faced a lot of third downs in this ball game. Did the Bows. They were 0 3 though on fourth down. Yeah, go for it.
Early in the third quarter, you'll remember this. Timmy even mentioned it to us in the coaches meeting before the game, how they were going to look for an opportunity to maybe steal possession on special teams and just try to do something. And it looked like they tried to bring the dogs and block a punt. And it looked like we might have nicked the punter, and there was laundry. They threw the flag on the field for running into the punter. And then Wyoming elected to decline it. And it was 4th and 5. Like, they would have gotten a first down. I don't know if you remember that, but it was.
I do. Yeah, we were talking. I mean, they must have told Craig Bowl that it was more than 5 yards. They must have told him that it was like 5.5 or something, and it wasn't going to give him the first down. Because I was a little surprised by that as well. It looked like it, but they must have let him know.
Yeah, because I mean, from our point of view, not only were we extremely confused, the only thought was, are they really like being that appreciative or like being that good at sports and sportsmanship over in
I was
Wyoming?
still pretty early in the third, right at that point.
But I mean, it was like 35-0 still. It just to us, it felt like, wow, these guys really don't believe we can do anything, and are declining a first down giving penalty.
Yeah, it must have been short.
Like.
Yeah, that was what we kind of surmised, was that it must have been 4th and 5.5 or something. They weren't quite going to get the first down. Wow. And Craig Bowl, pretty old school, right? He's gonna punt it on anything short there. So yeah, that's what I took out of it. I think it was probably just a little bit longer than the 5 yards.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and you brought it up earlier in the show. I've noticed this throughout this season, that we haven't been excellent in the red zone, really up until Nevada and against Air Force. It's been a big problem for Hawaii this season, especially when you consider Shager's yardage numbers compared to Hawaii's scoring numbers. They're not exactly telling of each other. You would think that even this game, if we're only being out produced by Wyoming by, I don't know, what is that, 75, 80 yards, something like that, that we would have half of their point total, maybe even 3/4. There's something to say about that, on how we just haven't been able to get it in the red zone. And some people could say it's play calling, other people could call it execution, and I'm more on that side of things, where we haven't been as dialed as a receiver unit, as quarterbacks, of, you get a one-on-one matchup with Stephen McBride on the outside, you take that back shoulder 10 out of 10 times. That was the right read. We needed to have a better opportunity to come down with that ball. If you get Alex Perry in a one-on-one situation on the outside, you throw him a jump ball and let him go up and be an athlete. If Pafeli Ashlock is on one-on-one coverage and you give him time to stutter and get a slant or a little delayed out route, there've just been, in the details where pass, run, and shoot teams, it felt, were just a much more efficient. This team just hasn't been as tight on the screws with some of the stuff that I believe would have probably told a different story towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and that's so much of football these days, right? When it
Is.
comes to moving the football, it's an offensive inclined game. Like teams move the football, but it comes down to those 30 and in, 35 and in, right? Can you convert? Can you stay on the field on third downs in those situations? The field condenses in particular, but yeah, it's a Hawaii team that 31 of 42 in terms of red zone scores. I don't have the percentage in mind, but we can do the quick math. In terms of red zone touchdowns, 23 of 42. So almost a little over 50%, right? So 19 times they've been in the red zone and haven't scored a touchdown. 9 times they haven't scored at all, right? And so it's not a great clip. It's not a great clip. If you look at
our conference games haven't been nearly as close as they were last year, where it felt like every game was within one score, right? There have been, 2 times there have been absolute knock the wheels off blowouts with San Jose and Wyoming. Nevada wasn't a good one. New Mexico wasn't a good one either, and UNLV wasn't close towards the end, even though we had a chance in the first half. So I don't know if we jump that up to say 60% or 70%, I don't know if that would quite make a difference on our record, but 50% in the red zone's probably not going to get it done.
Yeah, it's just not, right. I mean, it's kind of a weird. It's been a weird year. Yeah, to your point, right? That they've looked a lot better at times than last season in terms of offensively moving the ball, stopping the run, even at different points. But the good's been pretty good, but the bad has been frustrating, I guess to say, right? Because as you point out, they haven't played a lot of really close games, like down to the wire, outside of the New Mexico State game. The San Diego State game, they end up losing by a score. The Vanderbilt game, they end up losing by a score, but they're kind of like late scores, right? The San Diego State, when they kicked the field goal to cut it to 7, didn't get the onside kick. But other than that, their 3 conference wins, or the 2 conference wins, I should say, double digits, albeit, it's not like they blew them out. And then their conference losses outside of the San Diego State game, it's 24 at UNLV, it's 21 at New Mexico, it's 35 against San Jose State, it's 33 against Wyoming, right? So they haven't really been in those games, and that's I guess maybe that's the most concerning part, right? Is you're going to lose some games. I mean, I think my total before the season was I thought they were going to win 5 games. I didn't get all the previous 4 correct, but I think I had Colorado State being the 5th win, and that's still on the table here. And so they're kind of, you could argue that they're right about where I expected them to be. You could say that. But it's been a weird way to get here. Not a lot of close games. They've played really well when they've gotten out to a lead, and really that's only the two games, the Nevada and the Air Force game, and they've struggled outside of New Mexico. They've struggled once they've fallen behind. And so is it a team that, like a lot of teams, Wyoming's the same way, and they've got 7 wins on the season, but teams just tend to play a lot better when you're playing with the lead, right? It's kind of how things work out. Hawaii's no different, maybe to a bigger extreme, maybe than some of the other teams we've seen around the conference. And they're going to play another team in Colorado State this weekend, kind of similar. They're 5-6. They're looking to get into a bowl game. They've been super up and down. And I think that's, outside of maybe the 3 or 4 teams at the top of the conference, it's been a lot of the Mountain West this year. Wyoming's had some duds. San Jose State's playing really well right now, but they started off the season a little slow. Fresno, did they end up losing to New Mexico? I think I fell asleep on Saturday night after we got back down from Laramie, but they were like, New Mexico State was beating Fresno in Fresno, if I'm not mistaken. New Mexico State, New Mexico, the Lobos. It's been,
oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah,
New Mexico beat them 25-17. Oh my gosh.
So go figure, right? UNLV's in very good shape, by the way, to make the conference championship game, and they have been the most consistent team.
That's right.
I think in the conference.
Which that one voter preseason who had
I wonder who it was. We got to go find out who it was. I'm sure they probably.
He's making some money, whoever that is, because UNLV, he got action on that stuff.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, man, it's just tough, right? Because you want to be in those competitive games, even if you lose some of those, you want to be there. You want to grind it out. You want to find out. You got to learn how to win, right? There's a big part of that.
Off of that, I've got one other question for you. Okay. Late in the third quarter, beginning early of the fourth quarter, okay, our defense at that point made some great adjustments. Made some fantastic.
They played pretty well in the second half. It was a few different. I thought Justin.
That's right. They only scored one time in the entire second half and forced Wyoming to miss a field goal. So compared to what was happening in the first half, we
got a takeaway. Yeah,
we put the wall up. My observation from the booth, and I would love to know what you and Coach Rich were thinking on the other side of the wall, was the amount of running plays that we saw when we're still down 4 scores. And with each subsequent running play allowing more clock to go off, you talk about we need to be in a better position to win these football games. Sure, it's lofty. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But from a perception standpoint, I would have loved some hurry up tempo, some maybe even misplaced aggression, just to mix it up a little bit, because it looked like we kind of threw in the towel there, Jordan, at least in our play calling. And I wanted to know if you were kind of saw the same thing, because I know our audience is probably thinking the same thing if they continue to watch that football game late into the fourth.
Yeah, they cut it to 35-9, final minute of the third quarter, right? And you think, maybe they'll make this a little bit interesting. I'm sure folks that maybe had Hawaii plus 13.5 were taking particular interest if they were going to find their way back into a couple of scores. But yeah, there was, again, they moved the football in the second half. They were moving the football, and they just stalled out. Stalled out a few different times, and so yeah, I think you probably could have seen a little bit more of the urgency, right? They've huddled up a lot more in the last few games.
Yeah.
Than we saw early in the season when they were going no huddle, and I don't know if that factored into it, right? Going a little bit more with the huddle calls, going a little bit more with the wristband. And so I don't know if that hampered their ability to kind of get up there, go tempo. I think it's a balance, right? As a coach, as a play caller, and it's particularly in Coach Chang's spot where he's both, right? Where he's the head coach, where he's the play caller. where your defense was on the field a ton in the first half, right? And not necessarily in terms of time of possession, but they were running around out there for quite a bit. Wyoming didn't have the football, I think, for more than half the first half, and so not necessarily that the defense was out there, but they were out there for a lot of drives, right? Some of them short drives, some of them not. And so I don't know if part of the thought process is, hey, let's try and hold on to the football, right? That's what we're trying to build for this offense, is efficient. And that was the recipe for success. The previous 2 weeks was, hey, we're going to be a little more methodical, we're going to be a little more efficient. We want to kind of play at our tempo, right? And the tempo that seemingly has worked for them the previous 2 weeks was a little bit slower paced, right? It was a little more deliberate. And I think you make a fair point. It's like, well, you're down 35, you're down 32. Like maybe step on the gas a little bit. But at that point, you're balancing coming back and getting back in the ball game, and you're balancing building for the bigger picture. And I think we saw a little bit of that in the third quarter when they cut it 35-9. And maybe in the fourth quarter they could have, I think, perhaps looked to up the tempo, maybe work on a bit of that no huddle, work on getting those guys going. It was a lot of first down runs for sure for Hawaii as well, and that's going to eat up a lot of clock. But yeah, I think, working on a bit of the up tempo, working on a bit of the no huddle, probably doesn't hurt going forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know that's a little bit different scheme than what we're probably used to, and it looked like our line was getting all that they could handle out there, and so you probably a little bit to the altitude's credit. And so the more that you kind of push them, the more you're also gambling, like, are they going to be at their best each play? So
yeah,
I know it's probably a difficult tightrope for Timmy and that staff to make those calls. It was more just I would have liked to see some more stuff, but then I also want our fan base to kind of know what we saw the entire game. Wyoming was doing that deep cover three cloud, where they were petrified of Shager going over the top, petrified. And Hawaii's really only shot two things. They were eating up our running game in the holes with less than hat for hat, meaning they had 4 guys for our 5, and they were getting our running backs in the holes. So those
linebackers were good. Their linebackers were good.
They were really good. They were coming down. They were making plays in space. They were filling up gaps. So that was the first option. I mean, that is a give play. That's football one-on-one. If you have more guys than they do, you hand that off 100% of the time. So that's the first thing. The second thing would have been take those hitches and those short routes all day long. It's boring. It's singles. Sometimes it's intentional walks. You don't want to do it. You want to let that thing fly. You're in altitude. You could spin it. Shaker could probably throw it 80 yards on that field. I mean, it really does fly whenever you're at that altitude. But when the defense is giving that to you, that's what you got to do. And he did that a little bit in the first half where he pulled it and ran. Eventually, though, you just get bored. And you feel like you need to make up that 35-0 hole in 1 or 2 throws, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, man. And I think spot on with how Wyoming defended. They were not going to let guys like McBride get over the top. They were going to force them to drive. And when you're up 14-0 right out of the gate, it kind of allows you to stay with that game plan. But yeah, Easton Gibbs, really good linebacker. He's going to be an NFL guy, maybe not necessarily a draft pick, kind of like Chad Muma or Logan Wilson, former previous really good linebackers under Craig Bull. But he'll be in a camp. That dude runs really, really well. And Shea Suianoa, the weak side linebacker, he's another really solid player. And Devon Harris, man, he was coming off that edge and giving our tackles fits.
Yeah,
giving the University of Hawaii tackles fits. Pressuring from the outside, especially on those passing downs. I look at the box kind of checking out the some of the numbers here. We talked about some of the team numbers. Hawaii only 3 penalties in the ball game, a couple of untimely ones. The problem was Wyoming had 0. I don't know if I've really seen that in a while. A team with 0 penalties at this level. Shager 25 of 54 for 278 yards, the 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, was sacked 3 times. David Cordero, the leading rusher, 13 carries for 32 yards. Shager had 13 carries for a net of 19. Did gain 48. His involvement in the running game's been positive, I think, for sure. Landon Sims 8 carries for 16 yards, 67 total yards for Hawaii here. Ball spread out quite a bit. Stephen McBride had 5 catches for 103 yards. Chucky Hines 3 for 49, and that touchdown, I believe, is first of the season. Solovai Pulu had 3 grabs for 31 yards, a couple of nicely timed screens. Pofele Ashlock, one of his quieter performances in terms of stats this season, 4 catches, 25 yards. David Cordero had 3 for 19. Nick Senecal 2 for 17. Kwali Nishigai had 2 for 12. And Landon Sims, Devon Tauaefa, and Jonah Pinoke all had 1 grab apiece. Sims and Tauefa's catches went for 8 yards. Pinoke's catch went for 6 yards in this ball game as well. Shipley hit that field goal, and Jalen Smith, another pretty good game, I thought, by him. Justin Sinclair, to me, was the bright spot on defense. In particular, had that forced fumble, recovered it. Himself had 5 tackles, including 1 for a loss in the Wyoming loss this past weekend. All right, kind of running fun conversation here, but we'll go ahead and take our pause right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about our Laramie experience and then quickly preview Colorado State upcoming this weekend on senior night for Hawaii. All right, we'll be back with more here on Hawaii Football Now.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half time here on episode 117, Hawaii Football Now. Jordan Hunter back with you. Before we get into Colorado State coming up this weekend, where Hawaii will be an underdog on senior night, Hunter and I both got to go up to Wyoming. Appreciate the love that you guys dropped in the comments for last week. Fun opportunity. Hunter working the color on the radio side, and I got to do some of the play-by-play for the Spectrum television broadcast, working with Mitch Miano. It was a lot of fun. Great experience, I think, for both of us. Feel free to share on the work side, if you will. But it was really cool to go to Laramie. I've never been to Wyoming. This was my first time. For those unfamiliar, it's not that far from Denver. It's a couple hours north. So I flew into Denver, drove up to Laramie, drove back down, flew back home to Denver. But it's a cool spot. It's definitely a small college town. Everything in Laramie is all about the Cowboys. Every establishment you go to, there's a Cowboy flag, if not many. The workers at like every single place I went to, whether it was to get food, whether it was to pick up some supplies or anything like that, like everybody's rocking Wyoming gear. And it's that like iconic Cowboy logo, right? Even if it doesn't say Wyoming anywhere, it's that iconic Cowboy logo. It's those distinct colors, the brown and gold, right? And that was pretty cool to experience. I've spent some time in some other college towns, Corvallis, Eugene, some of the other stops kind of around the Pac-12 and whatnot. But it was cool. It was cool to take that in. Everybody was pretty excited. Everybody was really nice up there. It's a quiet town. I don't know if we really saw a building off of campus that had a more than a couple of stories in terms of height. A lot of old buildings, a lot of, it's like stepping back in time in different parts of that town for sure. But it was really cool. And we lucked out. The weather was great. It was mid 40s to mid 50s, especially at kickoff when it was, right about 52, 53 or something like that. Sun was shining down. Couldn't have asked for better football weather, quite honestly. The mountains are beautiful. It's a great spot. You got sky for days. You got cool temperatures. I'm sure when it snowed in over there, it's probably not quite as nice, but in terms of just getting around. But the snow-capped mountains surrounding Laramie, beautiful stuff. It was a lot of fun, man. It was cool, and got to kick it with Hunter for a little bit as well throughout what is always kind of a busy schedule as you're getting ready for these games and meeting with coaches and things like that. But yeah, Laramie, man, Laradice, pretty cool spot, and I like what they've got going on there in the Cowboys football program.
Yeah. You said it, man. Driving into Laramie, this was my first time too. I've got really dear friends in Colorado, and so spent a lot of time down there, but never went any further than Fort Collins. And so basically another, I don't know, half hour, Jordan, from Fort Collins, and
Yeah,
you're in
not far at
Laramie.
all.
And driving into Laramie, you almost feel like you should be on horseback. You've got these like old wooden buildings, and it feels like a refuge town at the base of the mountains you'd find in like a Tarantino movie or something like that. But you said it, man. Every store, shop, house has that diarrhea yellow and brown hanging from a flag, and the cowboy logo right there. And usually not too far from there, you also have a shrine of Josh Allen. When I tell you that guy could be the mayor there tomorrow if he wanted to be, I mean, still they worship that guy in Laramie, and deservedly so. When you think about what he did for that program and the success that he has there, I mean, true rags to riches kind of Cinderella story, and they still very much love and appreciate him. Ironic though, because Wyoming's backup quarterback still wears number 17, which I don't know how they haven't.
That's a big boy too, Svoboda.
Yes, Svoboda. I don't know how they haven't.
I think you got to be 6'4", 220 plus to wear 17. Yeah,
they're not letting me rock 17. They're not letting me wear 17 in Wyoming, man. No chance. But yeah, how have they not retired his number yet, Jordan?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe they're waiting for him to finish off his playing career or something like that. But yeah, I'd imagine at some point
it was like
they're gonna put that one up in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, it was like teammates of mine rocking 15. Like, no, that's Colt's number. No one should wear 15 at Hawaii.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a terrific opportunity. I must say though, I'm glad that you threw out how nice the people were, because absolutely super hospitable, super loving, very just kind, and wanted to know all about the team, and just it was cool. I must say though, because my family's from Oklahoma, Drew Brown played for Oklahoma State, and so I've been to one Oklahoma State game and been to Stillwater, Oklahoma a few times.
Yeah.
Wyoming has ripped off half of Oklahoma State's branding. I mean, half of it. Like, especially like the Pistol Pete logo, the illustration of the cowboy, like with the goatee, and he's got the two pistols. That is Pistol Pete from Oklahoma State, Jordan.
Are we certain that Oklahoma State didn't take it from Wyoming?
It has to be Oklahoma State. It has to. I mean, he is Pistol Pete from Oklahoma State. And did you hear people talking about Go Pokes? That's an Oklahoma State thing. They do it too. Now, maybe they like had some secret agreement, like, hey, we're both going to be able to say Go Pokes, but I only know it from Oklahoma State. So I'm like, man, are the even the riding out?
It's like an interchangeable thing with Cowboys, right?
I guess
this is culture that I'm not familiar with as much as others. But
now, if we see in the comments, if you guys find that research and tell me that I'm wrong, I'll be first to say, hey, my bad. But from my only experience being in Oklahoma, I'm like, man, these guys just copied a whole nother cowboy institution on another part of the country. But yeah, just I digress. That was really cool to be up there. For as small of a community as that place is, I've never been to Boise to see that situation, but it was a first class kind of institution with the amount of buy-in from their local fan base. I mean, everybody, when it came time to sing the alma mater, I mean, there wasn't one person sitting down. Everybody was up. They were clapping. They were bought in. The amount of personnel that was upstairs, whether it be like in the press box or stats or things like that, it felt like a Power 5 school. And to me, I know you thought about this. I know Coach Rich Miano and my co-host John Veneri were thinking it. If Laramie, Wyoming can produce the facilities, they can produce the fan buy-in and the game day like experience, you can't help but wonder, why can't Hawaii do something like this? You got a chance to tour the facilities a little bit, and I don't want to go too far down this wormhole, but it definitely showed what the power of one bought in community and the what a sold out fan base and sold out school for their team truly has the power to do.
Yeah, it's and it's always kind of an interesting thought experiment, right? Because some of these schools where you're in the small college town, right? That is the identity of Laramie, Wyoming, is the University of Wyoming. It's cowboy athletics, cowgirl athletics. Nice people. They're not a whole lot to do in Laramie, Wyoming, right? And they also get a lot of people coming from driving from elsewhere. Every single place I stopped on the way out of Denver, that was the gas station halfway between Laramie and Denver. That was the Chipotle we stopped at and ate along the way. That was the hotel we were staying at near the Denver airport. That was people at the airport, and that was people on my flight connecting through Portland. Literally every stop after since I left War Memorial Stadium to finding my way to my connecting flight, there were people with Wyoming gear. And so they come from all over, right? And that's the luxury of being on the continent. People can drive from every corner of Wyoming. People can drive up from Colorado. People can fly into Colorado fairly easily, from the surrounding states and make the drive up. And so, you can fill a 29,000 seat stadium because you can bring people in, right? It's a little bit easier than having people from off island fly over to Honolulu. It's a heck of a lot easier than flying people across the ocean. And I think, there's that aspect. And then also the aspect of, again, it's very much the identity of the town. Like, without the university there, Laramie would be even smaller than it already is, right? And for better or worse, Hawaii, there's so much to do. There's so many things going on outside of the University of Hawaii. And so could Hawaii get a little bit more buy-in? Could the University of Hawaii Athletic Pro get a little bit more financial commitment? That's another big thing, right? Those facilities are nice. They're brand new, and they're as nice as any place in the conference. The High Performance Athletic Center, the football facilities, it's top notch. And there's a lot of money coming in. There's a lot of private money coming in as well. That weight room, basically the new performance center, $48 million, half of it private. There's a lot of oil in Wyoming. I'm sure that helped from over time. So there are things that I think Hawaii are out of their control. But yeah, I think we could do a little bit better when it comes to it. That's for sure. And it was cool to see all of the buy-in there in Laramie. All right. I wanted to get your thoughts on Colorado State here before we finally wrap things up. We won't dive into them quite as in depth as we have in some of the other opponents. Hawaii, what are they playing for here? As Colorado State comes in as 6-point favorites, the total is 54.5. Colorado State, we know what they're playing for. This is a group that started the season 3-3 and then lost 3 straight games to fall to 3-6. Losses at UNLV, against Air Force, and then at Wyoming, but they've rebounded with 2 straight wins, beating San Diego State 2 weeks ago by 22-19 score, and then kind of handled Nevada last week, ended up winning it 30-20 to set themselves up. A win here at Hawaii likely gets them into a bowl game. Quite honestly, 5-7 might do it well. But getting to 6-6 would be huge for Jay Norvell's squad. For Hawaii, what do they have to play for, if you will? It is senior night.
So, yeah, I think for Hawaii, this is one last opportunity to be this push the sled, nose to the ground, kind of tough team. Yes, you would love the opportunity to play for a bowl game. That's kind of gone now, or excuse me, that is gone now. John said it this morning on the Sports Animals. Tough to really even know who the seniors are on this team right now, just with COVID and fluctuating eligibility and the new eligibility rule about if you play 4 games, but then you sit out the rest, like we're going to get one more year with Logan Taylor because of that rule. Same thing with Tylen Hines. We might even see the same thing with Jonah Pinoque. I'm not even sure who's going to be walking at this game. To tell you the truth, Jordan, I'm kind of waiting for that list to come out just to educate myself on who that's going to be. But yeah, I think Hawaii. I really hope and pray that they're able to garner some fan love and appreciation for what we did at Air Force 2 weeks ago and have a great show out for our last home game and last game for the season. And you still get one more opportunity to play football and rep the H and play for something bigger than yourself. And so I know that's what Coach Timmy and this staff is going to be communicating to those guys. Let's go out and be great. And when you look over at Colorado State, they're kind of like another us in some aspects, where they're 5-6. If we beat them, they're going to be 5-7, and we would finish the year 5-8. They did not play week 0. They had their losses to some Power 5 schools, but at times probably played above their expectations. I mean, they hung tough against number 18 Colorado and a thriller to begin the football year in week 2, and took Dion and crew to a very dramatic overtime game. That was fantastic. Other times throughout this year played, UNLV. They're the best team in our conference. Played them to a 25-23 loss. That was really close. And then there's been other times where they haven't been that good, and they've been one of the, mediocre to lower tier teams in our conference. So I think in some ways what Hawaii team is going to show up, and then the other part of this story is what Colorado State team is going to show up. Tough to really hang your hat on what you're going to be able to see at this point, Jordan.
Yeah, it's the Rams obviously have a lot to play for. You've got the connection between Timmy Chang and Jay Norvell, and the what was it, 5 years or whatever it was he spent on his staff at Nevada, and then even for a brief moment at Colorado State before getting the Hawaii job. So those guys know each other very well, still very tight. It's a Colorado State team that's improved. Their win total, preseason win total based on the odds makers was 4.5. They've gotten to 5, right? Hawaii was 3.5. They've gotten to 4. But yeah, I think for Hawaii, it's a chance to really kind of put a positive cap on this season, right? The whole, I think the main thing, obviously you're playing for goals, right? Conference championships, bowl games, things like that, but improvement, strides in the right direction. That was the biggest thing, I think, for a lot of folks coming in, I think even internally. And if they can cap this off with a win, a 2-win improvement after a 3-win season, I think that says a lot. I think that says a lot about this group. And especially if they can show once again, they can pull themselves off the mat after the disappointing game up in Wyoming. So it should be a lot of fun. Again, that's the usual 6 o'clock kickoff time. You can listen to it right here on ESPN. Honolulu Hunter will be on the sidelines patrolling with the Veneri brothers upstairs. The game will be on Spectrum Television as well. And then for those on the mainland, of course, you guys already know how to watch because you're the diehards tuning in, right? That Team One sports app outside of Hawaii. Any final thoughts here, Hunter? I actually have the list of guys being honored, and I'll read it here as part of our overtime segment. But any final thoughts before we head on out of here?
Yeah, the fans' voice is always a some would say a good time, others would say maybe a frustrating time. I think I'm more on the frustrating side of things.
I am entertained when I tune in, I will say.
Yeah. I want to speak on behalf of, it's just so funny, man, where we 1 week we can win against a historically good Air Force team and feel like we're riding on highs, and it's the complete opposite whenever we lose. And I understand that we've got a rabid fan base that cares an awful lot about this team, but just because we aren't battling for the conference championship doesn't mean that we have to drop to Division II or to become an N1AA school. And I in the most humble and respectful way as possible. For those that are thinking thoughts like that, let me throw in a couple of things. If that happens, we lose half of our women's sports. We lose half of our men's sports. It costs just as much to bring Montana over to play as it does Boise State or Colorado State. We are a Division I school. We are still in the middle of a rebuild. It is not time to just blow the whole thing up because on 1 week it doesn't go our way. I know, like, it's tough, but my final words into our final game of the season is this is right around where we thought we were going to be this year. Actually, 1 win better. They predicted Hawaii to have 3 wins this season, and we're at 4. Obviously, we want it to be better. Jordan and I want us to be battling every single year. We want it to want our games to be of consequence, but it's a bit too far to be saying to drop a division, a level, because that's just not where we're at just yet. And the repercussions of that are far bigger and far greater than you could really realize. So I needed to kind of throw that out there to kind of end the episode.
Yeah, it's well put, right? You're talking likely reductions in revenues. You're talking about reduction in scholarships. Obviously, you go from the 85 down to 50, whatever it is, at the FCS level, which likely impacts a lot of the other sports as well, right? And so there are a lot of ripple effects, a lot of ripple effects for something like that to happen. And I competitive wise is one question, but yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you. Financially, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough pill to swallow when it comes down to it, because again, the revenue and things of that nature, it makes a big difference. So yeah, that maybe we could table that for a fun little off-season segment here on Hawaii Football Now. But as we wrap things up here on episode 117, wanted to end things with listing the names. This per the Hawaii game notes this week. 15 total seniors will participate in the senior ceremony. And to Hunter's point, that doesn't always mean that they're not coming back. It usually does, but it's been done before, where somebody goes through senior night and it's like, oh, actually, I have a year of eligibility. I might come back for a post-grad year or something like that, right? It happens. But I think for the most part, most of these guys are done, including guys like Andrew Choi, who's been here for 1,000 years. Love Andrew, man. He was rocking the cowboy hat before the game up in Wyoming. But the list of guys here, 15. Linebacker Damari Blanks. You got defensive back Noah Canberra. We mentioned Andrew Choi, the defensive end, defensive tackle JJ Follow, defensive end Jonah Kahambai Welch, tight ends the Kamakaviva Ole brothers, Kalani Kao and Kila, Dalen Morris, the Navy grad transfer at quarterback, defensive end Elijah Robinson, defensive tackle Fo'isila, offensive lineman center Iliki Tanuvasa. You've got Isaiah Tufanga, who'll be going through the senior night ceremony, the linebacker, the defensive tackle John Tuitupo, who had a waiver to come back this year. So I'm pretty sure JT's done after this game. Boy, what a career some of those guys have had, right? Offensive lineman Kauka Umiamaka, and running back Solo Vaipulu, who's also been here for lost count. How many years Solo has been here, man? What a career, capping it off as a running back. That's got to be quite the thrill that he's gone through this year. So just wanted to mention those names. And if you get a chance, man, get out there Saturday. It'll be a fun atmosphere, as it always is at Ching. Had a really good crowd against Air Force, and hopefully something similar on Saturday night against the Rams of Colorado State. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you down at the field, and we'll see you back here on Hawaii Football Now. That'll wrap things up on episode 117. Big thanks to Spectrum of Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union and Battery Bill, as well as my guy Hunter and Jaron behind the controls as well. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for watching.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helly and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.